Does this undermine the government's credibility with defence professionals? And eventually, I think you've said, seeps into public consciousness. I mean, who is writing this stuff for the Prime Minister? When I wrote for a Prime Minister, every syllable was challenged for its accuracy.
Well, I think you have to conclude, Alan, this is such a pattern. I mean, I could give you 100 examples of exactly this sort of thing. This is such a pattern. I mean, Peter Dutton is saying we're going to get these AUKUS subs much sooner than the 2040s or 50s. Yet Scott Morrison and Vice Admiral Jonathan Meade say we won't get the first one before 2040. If we get one every 2 years, that means we get the eighth one in the 2050s. And there are a million other examples. Now, I think you've got to conclude the government is doing this on purpose, that it's decided it's too hard to overcome the defence bureaucracy and actually buy and build weapons for the next 5 years. It abolished the only armed drone program we had, the Sky Guardian, because it's like the hospital in Westminster. Perfect hospital because it has no patients. We've got the perfect defence force because it has no weapons. And this, I think there's not a single defence professional who takes the government at its word. And even though the government thinks it can bamboozle the public, eventually the public works out, you know, guess what? They made all these announcements, but nothing has actually happened. Here we are after 9 years of Liberal government. We still don't have a submarine and there's no submarine on the horizon.
Right.
And eventually the public thinks these fellas are having a lender me.
Well, what about what you wrote recently? You said the Russian invasion of Ukraine is the most powerful, shocking wake-up call to Western strategic complacency since the end of the Vietnam War. You said Australia, despite the lofty rhetoric, shows no signs of taking this historic wake-up call seriously. Of all nations in the Western Alliance, you said, we are long-term amongst the most vulnerable and the least prepared.
Well, I believe that's true, Alan. And, you know, it's no fun for me to be, you know, so offside with a centre-right government and everything. But, you know, I think I've got an obligation to the truth. And that is the truth. I mean, two things have changed the nature of modern warfare. The way the Chinese embraced an asymmetric strategy. They're not as powerful as the Americans. So they said, how can we make it impossible for the Americans to operate near our shores? They did that through missiles. Then along came Russia and Ukraine, showing that a state can be massively attacked with no notice at all, and Ukraine has fought the Russians to a standstill and may have a victory by using missiles and drones. So a big Russian capital ship worth a couple of $2 billion, Ukraine with $40 million worth of missiles sinks this ship using drones to distract its defences and operating often with mobile phones. So what does a small power like Australia do when confronting a big power like China? It invests in missiles and drones and asymmetric capabilities. What are we doing? We're spending $30 billion on heavy armour. We're buying 75 tanks, which is not a credible capability in any context and has no application to China. We're not buying missiles. We're not manufacturing missiles. We have no ground-launched missiles. We could have 40,000 or, you know, even say 4,000 missiles across northern Australia and ground-based launches, which would make it impossible for the Chinese to feel safe whenever they're in our waters. Instead of which they come into our waters, whether it's Exmouth or the Arafura Sea or anywhere else, and they know that whatever happens, we can do them no harm. That there are now, that's okay while the Americans are providing for our security. But if you get a left-wing Democrat president or a Republican who's isolationist and they think they've got better things to do with the American taxpayers' dollars than guarantee Australian security, we might have to provide for our own security one day. And despite all the brave talk, we're doing nothing about it.
Unbelievable. Magnificent exposition. Greg, I think people listening to you are absolutely bewildered. Thank you for the clarity of your thoughts. Thank you for coming on the program. And we do look forward to talking to you again, Greg. There he is.
Thanks,
Greg,
Alan. It's
Greg
great
Sheridan.
to be with you. And
wonderful.
Great
fellow.
to see you in such great form.
Thank you, Greg. Greg Sheridan, the foreign editor of the Australian newspaper.